kind black teen helps elderly man carry groceries. Next day, police knock on his door with a surprising guest. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Riverton's town square. Shadows lengthened, stretching across the cobblestone streets as the evening set in. Despite the picturesque setting, a tense undercurrent vibrated through the town. Marcus, standing on the edge of the square, could almost feel it, a palpable sense of unease that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Recent events had brought underlying tensions in Riverton to the surface, and the calm facade of the town masked a simmering discontent. The new initiatives aimed at bridging racial divides and fostering community understanding had been met with mixed reactions. Marcus, a passionate advocate for change, had faced opposition from some residents who felt that their way of life was under threat. As he watched the interactions around him, the weight of his efforts and the challenges ahead became even more apparent. The square was bustling with activity as families and friends gathered for their evening routines. Laughter and conversation filled the air, but the recent turbulence had left its mark. Marcus's gaze drifted to the fountain at the center of the square, where a commotion had started. His heart sank as he saw David, a key ally in the community's efforts for change, surrounded by a group of angry men. David's normally calm demeanor was strained, his face flushed with frustration. The group of men led by Bill, a prominent local figure known for his outspoken opposition, were clearly agitated. Their voices rose in a cacophony of anger and accusation. The contrast between David's restrained composure and the group's aggressive posturing was striking. Marcus hurried toward the scene, his steps quickening as he approached the gathering. The confrontation was escalating, and the tension was palpable. The air seemed charged with a mix of hostility and fear, a stark reminder of the deep divisions that still plagued the town. "David," Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the din. "What's happening?" David turned, his eyes meeting Marcus's with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's Bill and his group," he said, gesturing to the men who were shouting. "They're upset about the recent changes and feel like their voices aren't being heard. It's becoming a real issue." Bill, a burly man with a deep-set scowl, stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "You and your group are trying to push all these changes on us?" he growled. "We don't want any part of it. We like things the way they were." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure amidst the rising hostility. "Bill, we're not here to force anything. We're trying to create a community where everyone feels respected. The changes we're making are meant to address issues that have been ignored for too long." Bill's face reddened with anger. "Ignored? This is our town. We don't need your kind of change. You're the ones disrupting our way of life." The other men in the group muttered in agreement, their discontent evident. Marcus could see the frustration etched on David's face, and he knew that the situation required careful handling. The crowd had grown larger, and onlookers were starting to gather, their expressions ranging from concern to curiosity. "Everyone, let's take a step back," Marcus said, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "We need to have a constructive conversation, not a shouting match." Bill snorted dismissively. "Constructive conversation? This is just another attempt to shove your agenda down our throats." Marcus felt a surge of frustration but forced himself to remain calm. "I understand that change is hard, but if we want to move forward as a community, we need to address these issues openly and respectfully. This shouting won't solve anything." David stepped in, his voice steady but tinged with underlying tension. "What we need is dialogue, not division. The issues we're dealing with are complex, but we can't ignore them. If we do, they'll only continue to divide us." As the confrontation continued, Marcus could feel the weight of Riverton's divisions pressing down on him. The hostility from Bill's group was a stark reminder of the resistance to change that existed within the community. It was clear that addressing these issues would require more than just words. It would take real, tangible efforts and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. David looked at Marcus, his expression a mixture of determination and fatigue. "We need to show them that we're here to listen and work together. It's not about us versus them. It's about finding common ground and moving forward." Marcus nodded, his resolve strengthening. "You're right. We need to find a way to address their concerns while also pushing for the progress that's necessary. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus and David stood together, both feeling the weight of the task ahead. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the deep-seated resistance to change that still existed in Riverton. It was clear that their work was far from over and that bridging the gap between opposing views would require patience, empathy, and continued effort. "Thanks for handling that," Marcus said quietly to David. "I know it's not easy." David nodded, his face weary but resolute. "It's part of the process. We're making progress, but there's still a long way to go." Marcus agreed, watching as the last of the onlookers drifted away. The evening sun continued to cast its warm light over the town, but for Marcus, it felt like a symbol of both the challenges and the potential for change that lay ahead. The confrontation in the town square had been a painful reminder of the work still needed, but it also reinforced his commitment to the cause. As he and David walked away from the scene, Marcus felt a renewed sense of determination. The path to unity and understanding was fraught with obstacles, but moments like these underscored the importance of their mission. He knew that, despite the resistance and setbacks, they were making strides towards a more inclusive and respectful community. The road ahead would be challenging, but Marcus was prepared to face it head-on. He understood that true change required more than just surface-level efforts. It required a deep, ongoing commitment to addressing the root causes of division and working towards meaningful solutions. The encounter in the town square was just one chapter in a much larger story, and Marcus was determined to see it through to the end. The town of Riverton was experiencing an uneasy calm. The recent events had stirred emotions and brought underlying tensions to the surface. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets, whispers and murmurs filled the air. The town was divided, and the recent changes had only exacerbated the divisions. Marcus was deep in thought as he walked through the town square, his mind replaying the events of the past few weeks. He had been working tirelessly to bridge the gap between the black and white communities, and though progress was being made, it felt like a delicate balancing act. At the edge of the square, a small crowd had gathered. Their voices were raised, and the tension was palpable. Marcus approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized some of the faces in the crowd, familiar, yet now bearing the weight of conflict and frustration. David stood at the center of the commotion, his expression a mix of determination and anxiety. He was attempting to mediate, but the crowd's anger was growing. Marcus joined David, placing a hand on his shoulder. "How's it going?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. David glanced at Marcus, his eyes reflecting the strain of the situation. "It's getting out of hand. People are frustrated, and I don't know how much longer we can keep this from escalating." Marcus surveyed the crowd, noting the sharp divide between the groups. On one side were those who felt the recent changes were forced upon them, while on the other were those who felt that change was long overdue. The conflict was raw and visceral. "We need to calm them down," Marcus said, his voice firm. "Let's try to get everyone to listen. Maybe if we can find some common ground, we can prevent this from turning into something worse." David nodded, though his face was lined with worry. "I'll give it a shot. But you know as well as I do that emotions are running high. People aren't interested in hearing reason right now." Marcus stepped forward, raising his voice to address the crowd. "Everyone, please, we need to take a step back and listen to each other. We're all here because we care about this town. Fighting among ourselves isn't going to solve anything." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, but Marcus's plea seemed to cut through the noise. He continued, "We've made progress, but it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done. Let's focus on finding solutions together instead of letting anger drive us apart." A few voices in the crowd began to quiet, but others remained defiant. The divide was stark, and the atmosphere was charged with hostility. Marcus could see the frustration in people's faces, and it was clear that the recent events had left deep scars. David took the microphone and began to speak, trying to reason with the crowd. "We need to remember why we're here. The changes we're seeing are meant to bring us together, not tear us apart. It's okay to disagree, but we have to do it respectfully. We can't let anger dictate our actions. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some nodded in agreement, while others continued to shout, their voices filled with frustration. Marcus felt a pang of despair, realizing that bridging this gap would be harder than he had anticipated. As David spoke, Marcus noticed a group of older men standing at the back, their expressions dark and unyielding. He recognized them as some of the town's most vocal critics of the recent changes. They were known for their resistance to any form of progress that challenged their views. Marcus approached them cautiously, trying to engage in a dialogue. "Gentlemen, can we talk for a moment? I understand that you're frustrated, but we need to find a way to work through this." One of the men, a grizzled figure with a stern face, turned to Marcus with a scowl. "What's there to talk about? We don't want these changes. They go against everything we believe in." Marcus took a deep breath, his mind racing for the right words. "I understand that change can be difficult, but we have to consider the broader impact. We're trying to create a community where everyone feels valued and respected. It's not about undermining anyone's beliefs. It's about finding a way to coexist peacefully." The man's expression softened slightly, but he remained skeptical. "You say that, but it feels like we're being pushed aside. Our voices aren't being heard." Marcus nodded, acknowledging the concern. "I hear you, and your voices are important. We need to find a way to address everyone's concerns, but we also need to be willing to listen and compromise." The conversation was tense, but Marcus felt that it was a start. The old man's demeanor suggested that he was open to discussion, even if he wasn't fully convinced. Marcus hoped that this could be the beginning of a dialogue that might eventually lead to understanding. As the evening wore on, the crowd began to disperse, but the sense of unease lingered. Marcus and David stood together, watching the last of the people leave. The tension in the air was thick, and both men knew that the road ahead would be challenging. David sighed, his shoulders slumping with exhaustion. "We managed to keep things from getting worse tonight, but I'm not sure how much longer we can hold this together. People are tired, and their patience is wearing thin." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "I know, but we have to keep pushing forward. We've made progress, and we can't let this setback derail everything we've worked for." David looked at Marcus, his expression weary but determined. "You're right. We can't give up. The work we're doing is too important." As they parted ways, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the challenges ahead would test their resolve. The town was deeply divided, and the path to unity would be fraught with obstacles. But Marcus was determined to persevere, knowing that the stakes were too high to abandon their efforts. The town's divide had become increasingly evident as tensions flared and emotions ran high. The recent changes had stirred up strong feelings on both sides, and the atmosphere was charged with a sense of impending conflict. Marcus was acutely aware of the growing animosity and the need for a resolution. The town hall meeting was scheduled for that evening, and it was expected to be a pivotal moment in addressing the town's issues. The room was packed with residents, their faces reflecting a range of emotions: anger, frustration, and hope. The meeting was a critical opportunity for open dialogue, but Marcus knew that it would be a test of their ability to manage the escalating tensions. Marcus arrived early to prepare for the meeting, his mind racing with thoughts of how to address the divided crowd. He reviewed his notes, trying to anticipate the questions and concerns that would arise. The stakes were high, and the outcome of the meeting could significantly impact the future of Riverton. As the meeting began, the room fell silent, and the town's mayor took the podium. The mayor's voice was calm but firm as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to discuss the recent changes and to hear your concerns. This is a chance for us to come together and find a way forward." The mayor's words were met with a mix of applause and murmurs. Marcus could sense the underlying tension and the divisions that were simmering beneath the surface. The meeting was a crucial moment for addressing these issues, but it was clear that finding common ground would be a challenge. The first speaker was an elderly woman who had been a longtime resident of Riverton. Her voice was shaky but resolute as she spoke. "I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen a lot of changes, but these recent changes, they don't sit right with me. I feel like my concerns and values are being disregarded." Her words were met with nods from some members of the crowd, while others looked on with skepticism. Marcus could see that the woman's concerns were representative of a broader sentiment among some of the town's residents. It was important to address these feelings with sensitivity and respect. David, who was seated beside Marcus, leaned in and whispered, "This is going to be tough. The divisions are deep, and it's clear that people are feeling unheard and frustrated." Marcus nodded, his mind racing as he considered how to navigate the situation. "We need to address the concerns head-on and show that we're listening. It's crucial that we demonstrate empathy and understanding, even if we don't have all the answers." The meeting continued, with various residents voicing their opinions and concerns. The discussions were passionate and, at times, heated. The divide between those who supported the recent changes and those who opposed them was evident in every interaction. As the meeting progressed, tensions reached a boiling point. A heated exchange erupted between two residents, one a staunch supporter of the changes and the other a vocal critic. Their argument quickly escalated, and the room was filled with shouting and anger. Marcus and David exchanged worried glances, knowing that the situation was spiraling out of control. Marcus stepped forward, raising his voice to be heard above the din. "Everyone, please. We need to maintain civility and focus on finding solutions. We're here to discuss our differences and work towards a resolution." His plea was met with mixed reactions. Some of the crowd quieted down, while others continued to argue. The atmosphere was charged with frustration, and it was clear that finding common ground would require more than just words. It would require a genuine effort to bridge the divide. David took the microphone, addressing the crowd with a sense of urgency. "I know that emotions are running high, but we have to remember why we're here. We want to build a community where everyone feels heard and respected. Let's take a step back and focus on how we can move forward together." Despite David's efforts, the meeting remained tense, with many residents still voicing their concerns and frustrations. It was clear that the path to resolution would be long and arduous, and Marcus felt the weight of the challenge ahead. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus and David were left to contemplate the next steps. The divide between the town's residents was stark, and the path to unity seemed more distant than ever. But Marcus was determined to persevere, knowing that the stakes were too high to abandon their efforts. The town's future depended on their ability to navigate the complex and deeply ingrained issues that had surfaced. Marcus knew that the work ahead would require patience, empathy, and a steadfast commitment to building bridges between the divided communities. The early morning light cast a gentle glow over Riverton, but beneath the calm facade, tension simmered. Marcus had just finished his morning run and was heading back to his home when he noticed a police car parked outside his house. His heart sank, and he quickened his pace, feeling a sense of foreboding. As Marcus approached, he saw two officers speaking with his neighbor, Mrs. Johnson. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. The officers looked serious, their expressions conveying the gravity of the situation. Marcus's anxiety heightened. He knew that the police presence could mean trouble, especially given the current climate in town. "Everything all right here?" Marcus asked as he approached the group. The officers turned to Marcus, their expressions unreadable. One of them, Officer Davis, who was known for his no-nonsense demeanor, spoke up. "We received a report about a disturbance in the area. We're just checking things out." Marcus glanced at Mrs. Johnson, who seemed visibly shaken. "What kind of disturbance?" Officer Davis hesitated before responding. "It's related to some recent events. We're trying to gather information and ensure that everything is under control." Marcus's mind raced. He knew that tensions had been running high, but he hadn't expected a direct confrontation with the police. "Is there something I should be aware of? I've been working to address the issues in the community. If there's something going on, I'd like to help." Officer Davis's gaze was stern. "We appreciate your willingness to help, but right now, we need to handle this situation carefully. We're following up on a few leads and trying to make sure everyone stays safe." As the officer spoke, another police car pulled up, and a familiar figure stepped out. It was Officer Thompson, known for his more empathetic approach to policing. Marcus felt a slight sense of relief at seeing him. Officer Thompson approached Marcus with a nod. "Hey, Marcus, just wanted to keep you in the loop. We're investigating a complaint related to some recent incidents. It's important for us to address these concerns and ensure that the community remains safe." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I understand. If there's anything I can do to assist, or if you need information, just let me know." Officer Thompson's expression softened. "Thanks, Marcus. We appreciate your cooperation. We're just trying to keep things calm and make sure that everyone's concerns are addressed." As the officers continued their investigation, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The presence of the police was a stark reminder of the tension that had taken hold of Riverton. He watched as Officer Davis and Officer Thompson spoke with several residents, their interactions marked by a mixture of suspicion and concern. Marcus knew that the police presence could either escalate the situation or help to de-escalate it. He hoped for the latter, but the reality was that the divide between the communities was deep and complicated. He felt a growing sense of urgency to find a way to bridge the gap and bring about real change. Later that day, Marcus sat in his office, reflecting on the morning's events. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was David, looking troubled. "Hey, Marcus, I heard about the police visit this morning. Any idea what's going on?" David asked, taking a seat. Marcus sighed. The officers were investigating a complaint related to the recent incidents. They didn't go into much detail, but it's clear that tensions are still running high. David nodded, his expression grim. "I've been hearing the same from other residents. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty right now. We need to find a way to address these concerns before things get worse." Marcus agreed. "I'm worried that the police presence might just add fuel to the fire. We need to find a way to bring the community together and address the underlying issues." David looked thoughtful. "Maybe it's time for another community meeting. We need to create a space where people can voice their concerns and work towards solutions. It's important that we address these issues head-on." Marcus nodded, appreciating David's suggestion. "I think you're right. We need to keep the lines of communication open and work towards finding common ground. I'll start organizing another meeting." As Marcus and David discussed their plans, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety. The challenges they faced were immense, and the path to resolution seemed increasingly difficult. But he knew that they had to keep pushing forward, no matter how daunting the task. The encounter with the police had highlighted the deep-seated issues within the community, and Marcus was determined to address them. He understood that the road ahead would be challenging, but he was committed to working towards a resolution that would benefit everyone in Riverton. The sun was setting over Riverton, casting long shadows over the town's buildings. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation as Marcus prepared for the upcoming community meeting. The previous police visit had only added to the sense of urgency, and Marcus knew that this meeting would be crucial in addressing the town's concerns. As Marcus arrived at the town hall, he was greeted by a mix of familiar faces and new ones. The room was already filling up, and the buzz of conversation was accompanied by a palpable sense of tension. Marcus took a deep breath, steeling himself for the difficult conversations ahead. David was already at the front of the room, working with the town's mayor to set up the meeting. Marcus joined him, and they exchanged a look of determination. They both knew that this meeting would be a test of their ability to navigate the complex issues facing the community. The meeting began with the mayor addressing the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to discuss the recent events and to address any concerns you may have. It's important that we come together and work towards solutions." The mayor's words were met with a mixture of applause and murmurs. Marcus could see the divide in the crowd, the supporters of the recent changes, and those who felt that their concerns were being ignored. The tension was palpable, and Marcus knew that the discussions ahead would be challenging. The first speaker was a young man named Jake, who had been vocal in his opposition to the recent changes. He stood at the podium, his voice filled with frustration. "I've been living in Riverton my whole life, and I've seen the town change in ways that I don't agree with. I feel like my voice isn't being heard, and it's causing a lot of anger and resentment." Jake's words were met with nods from some members of the audience, while others looked on with skepticism. Marcus could see that Jake's concerns were representative of a broader sentiment among some residents. It was important to address these feelings with empathy and understanding. As Jake spoke, Marcus noticed a group of older residents seated at the back of the room. They looked discontented, their expressions reflecting a deep-seated frustration. Marcus knew that these residents were among those who had been most resistant to the changes in town. After Jake finished speaking, the mayor turned to the crowd. "Thank you for sharing your concerns, Jake. It's important that we hear from everyone, and we appreciate your honesty." The next speaker was a middle-aged woman named Linda, who had been a strong supporter of the recent changes. Her voice was filled with determination as she spoke. "We've made a lot of progress, but there's still more work to be done. We need to come together and support each other, rather than letting our differences divide us." Linda's words were met with applause from some members of the audience, but others remained silent. The divide between the supporters and critics of the changes was evident, and Marcus could feel the tension in the room. As the meeting continued, the discussions grew more heated. The divide between the two sides became increasingly apparent, and it was clear that finding common ground would be a significant challenge. The conversations were passionate, and the emotions were raw. At one point, a heated argument erupted between two residents, one who supported the changes and another who opposed them. Their voices rose in anger, and the room was filled with shouting. Marcus and David stepped in, trying to calm the situation. "Everyone, please," Marcus said, his voice raised to be heard above the din. "We need to maintain civility and focus on finding solutions. This is a chance for us to work together, not tear each other apart." Despite Marcus's efforts, the argument continued, and it was clear that the room was divided. The discussions were intense, and the atmosphere was charged with frustration. Marcus felt a growing sense of despair, realizing that the path to resolution would be more difficult than he had anticipated. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus and David were left to contemplate the next steps. The divide between the town's residents was stark, and the path to unity seemed increasingly distant. But Marcus knew that they had to keep pushing forward, no matter how challenging the road ahead. The meeting had highlighted the deep-seated issues within the community, and Marcus was determined to address them. He understood that the road to resolution would require patience, empathy, and a steadfast commitment to finding common ground. The days following the community meeting were marked by a growing sense of unrest. The discussions had not provided the resolution that many had hoped for, and the divide between the town's residents remained as pronounced as ever. Marcus felt the weight of the situation, knowing that the path to unity was fraught with challenges. One evening, as Marcus was working late in his office, he received a call from David. David's voice was tinged with concern. "Hey, Marcus, we need to talk. There's been some unrest in town, and it's starting to affect the community." Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach. "What's going on?" David's voice was heavy with worry. "There have been several incidents, vandalism and heated arguments. It's clear that tensions are escalating, and we need to address this before things get worse." Marcus sighed, feeling a sense of urgency. "We need to find a way to calm things down and address the underlying issues. I'm worried about how this will impact the community." David agreed. "I think it's time for us to take a more proactive role. We need to address the concerns head-on and work towards finding solutions. It's important that we show the community that we're committed to resolving these issues." Marcus nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll start by organizing another town meeting. We need to create a space where people can express their concerns and work towards solutions." As Marcus and David discussed their plans, they both knew that the path ahead would be challenging. The growing resentment within the community was a reminder of the deep-seated issues that needed to be addressed. Marcus was determined to persevere, knowing that the future of Riverton depended on their ability to navigate these challenges. The following day, Marcus began preparing for the town meeting. He knew that it would be crucial to address the community's concerns and work towards finding common ground. He reached out to local leaders and community members, encouraging them to participate in the meeting and share their perspectives. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Marcus hoped that it would provide an opportunity for the community to come together and work towards resolution. He knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but he was committed to finding a way forward. As the days passed, Marcus continued to work tirelessly to address the issues facing the community. He met with local leaders, organized events, and reached out to residents to build support for the upcoming meeting. Despite the challenges, he remained hopeful that they could make a difference. However, just as he was beginning to see signs of progress, the tension in town escalated dramatically. One night, as Marcus was preparing to leave his office, he heard a loud banging at the door. Startled, he quickly made his way to the front, only to be met by the sight of several police officers standing on his porch, their faces stern. Without waiting for an explanation, the officers barged into his home, pushing past him as they began to search the house. "What's going on?" Marcus demanded, his heart pounding in his chest. One of the officers, a tall man with a hard expression, turned to him. "We received a report about some suspicious activity linked to you. We're here to check it out." Marcus felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. "Suspicious activity? I've done nothing wrong." The officer's gaze didn't waver. "We're just doing our job, sir. Step aside and let us do ours." Marcus's mind raced as he watched the officers go through his belongings, their actions invasive and humiliating. He knew that this wasn't just about a simple investigation. This was a direct result of the growing tensions in the town, a manifestation of the fear and mistrust that had taken hold. As the officers continued their search, neighbors began to gather outside, drawn by the commotion. Marcus could hear the murmurs of disapproval and suspicion, the very thing he had been working so hard to overcome. The situation felt surreal, as if all the progress they had made was unraveling right before his eyes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officers finished their search and left without any explanation. Marcus stood in the middle of his ransacked home, the weight of the night's events heavy on his shoulders. He knew that this incident would only deepen the divide in the town, reinforcing the very prejudices he had been fighting against. As the last officer exited, Marcus locked the door behind him and slumped against it, his mind reeling. He realized that the road ahead was even steeper than he had anticipated, but he also knew that giving up was not an option. The future of Riverton depended on his ability to stand firm in the face of adversity, to continue fighting for the unity and understanding that the town so desperately needed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Riverton's town square, where a sense of cautious optimism hung in the air. The recent community meeting had left a mark, and while some felt hopeful, others remained skeptical. Marcus and David had been working tirelessly to organize a series of events aimed at fostering dialogue and bridging the gaps that had surfaced. Marcus was in the square, overseeing the setup for a community event designed to encourage positive interactions. The event, dubbed the Riverton Unity Fair, was meant to celebrate the progress the town had made and to offer a platform for residents to share their stories and experiences. Booths were being set up, each representing different cultural backgrounds, and local artists were preparing to showcase their talents. David arrived, looking more relaxed than usual. "Everything's coming together nicely," he said, surveying the preparations. Marcus nodded. "It feels like we're finally making some progress. I just hope the community responds positively." As the event began, families, friends, and neighbors gathered in the square, mingling and enjoying the various activities. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the enticing aroma of food from different cultural cuisines. Marcus watched with a sense of pride as people from different backgrounds interacted and engaged in meaningful conversations. He noticed Mr. Anderson among the crowd, standing at a booth dedicated to local history. The old man's presence was a testament to the changes that had taken place in Riverton. Marcus approached him, feeling a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "How are you holding up, Mr. Anderson?" Marcus asked, offering a warm smile. Mr. Anderson looked at Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "I'm doing better than I have in a long time, Marcus. I've been reflecting a lot on the changes we've seen in Riverton and on the role I've played in all this. Marcus nodded, sensing the weight of Mr. Anderson's words. It's been a journey, hasn't it? Sometimes it feels like we're just scratching the surface, but the progress is real. Mr. Anderson's eyes softened. It is, and I'm grateful for that. I've been trying to make amends for my past mistakes, and I think I'm finally starting to understand what it means to be part of a community that's working towards real change. Marcus could see the genuine remorse and hope in Mr. Anderson's eyes. Your efforts are making a difference. It's not just about changing minds, it's about changing hearts. Mr. Anderson nodded slowly. You've shown me that. You've inspired a lot of people, including myself. I never imagined I'd be a part of something like this. As they sat together, watching the people move about in the town square, Marcus felt a renewed sense of optimism. It's amazing how one person's actions can ripple out and affect so many lives. The town is different now, but there's still more to be done. Mr. Anderson agreed. There always will be, but the important thing is that we're moving in the right direction. And it's thanks to people like you, Marcus, who are willing to stand up and lead by example. The two men sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the quiet of the evening wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that the hard work and dedication had paid off. The town was healing, and he was proud to be part of that journey. As time went on, Riverton began to embrace its new spirit of unity and understanding. Community events that once served as battlegrounds for differing opinions were now opportunities for connection and growth. The town's social fabric was being rewoven with threads of empathy, cooperation, and respect. Marcus continued to lead initiatives that fostered dialogue and understanding. One of his proudest achievements was the creation of a Riverton Unity Festival, an annual event that celebrated the diversity of the town and encouraged residents to share their stories and experiences. The festival was a vibrant celebration of the town's progress. There were booths representing different cultural backgrounds, performances showcasing local talent, and activities designed to bring people together. Marcus watched with pride as families and friends gathered to enjoy the festivities, knowing that the event symbolized the unity that had been achieved. David, who had become a close friend and ally in the effort to change the town, was actively involved in the festival. He managed a booth that highlighted the importance of community engagement and social justice. Seeing David's enthusiasm and commitment was a reminder of how far they had come. During the festival, Marcus was approached by a young woman who introduced herself as Sarah. She had recently moved to Riverton and had heard about the positive changes in the town. "I've heard so much about the work you've done here," Sarah said, her eyes shining with admiration. "It's incredible to see a community come together like this." Marcus smiled modestly. "It's been a team effort. A lot of people have worked hard to make this happen, but it's great to hear that you're seeing the positive impact." Sarah nodded. "I'm excited to be a part of this community. It's inspiring to see how much difference a group of people can make when they come together." Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment as he listened to Sarah's words. It was moments like these that made all the struggles and challenges worth it. Later, as the festival continued, Marcus and David found themselves reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. They talked about the challenges they had faced, the progress they had made, and the work still to be done. "It's amazing to see how far we've come," David said, his voice filled with pride. "But we can't lose sight of the fact that there's still more work to be done." Marcus agreed. "Absolutely. We've made significant strides, but we need to continue pushing for progress and ensuring that the town remains united." As they walked through the festival, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The event was a testament to the power of community and the impact that collective effort could have. It was a reminder of why they had started this journey and why it was important to keep moving forward. The festival marked a turning point for Riverton. It was a celebration of the town's progress, but it was also a call to continue working towards a more inclusive and understanding community. Marcus was proud of what they had achieved, but he knew that the journey was far from over. As the festival drew to a close and the crowd began to disperse, Marcus took a moment to reflect on the journey he had been on. He walked through the town square, now a symbol of the changes that had taken place. The once divided community was now a place where people from different backgrounds interacted with respect and understanding. He spotted Mr. Anderson standing by the fountain, looking content and at peace. Marcus approached him, and the old man greeted him with a warm smile. "I think this festival was a success," Mr. Anderson said. "It's heartwarming to see so many people coming together and celebrating what makes our town special." Marcus agreed. "It really is. It's a testament to the hard work and dedication of everyone involved. But there's always more work to be done. Change is an ongoing process." Mr. Anderson nodded. "Indeed. But today, we can celebrate our progress. We've come a long way, and I'm proud of what we've achieved." Marcus looked around at the people who were now enjoying the last moments of the festival. The sense of unity and community was palpable, and it filled him with hope for the future. As they walked together, Marcus and Mr. Anderson discussed their plans for the future. They talked about continuing their efforts to promote understanding and respect in Riverton and beyond. Their conversation was filled with optimism and determination, reflecting the spirit of the town they both cared deeply about. The festival had been a powerful reminder of the progress that had been made, but it also highlighted the ongoing challenges that remained. Marcus and Mr. Anderson were committed to addressing these challenges and continuing their work to build a more inclusive and understanding community. As the sun set over Riverton, Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment. The town had come a long way, and he was proud of the role he had played in the transformation. But he also knew that the journey was far from over. There was still much work to be done, and he was ready to face the challenges ahead. The following months saw continued progress in Riverton. The town's commitment to inclusivity and understanding became a model for other communities facing similar challenges. The initiatives started by Marcus and his supporters inspired others to take action in their own towns. Marcus continued to work tirelessly, driven by the belief that positive change was possible. He collaborated with local organizations, schools, and leaders to expand the reach of their efforts. His work was recognized both locally and nationally, and he was invited to speak at various conferences and events about his experiences and the lessons learned. David remained a close ally and friend, and together they worked on new projects aimed at furthering their goals. Their partnership was a testament to the power of friendship and collaboration in making a difference. As Marcus looked back on his journey, he was filled with gratitude for the support he had received and the lessons he had learned. He knew that the work was far from over, but he was confident that the foundations laid in Riverton would continue to foster a spirit of unity and understanding for years to come. The story of Riverton's transformation was a powerful reminder of the impact that one person's courage and determination could have. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that change was possible. And as Marcus looked towards the future, he knew that the journey was just beginning. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end of today's video. Please hit the subscribe button to stay updated on all our latest content.